So I went slightly wrong at this point because I should have sewn a vertical line down the middle of that pocket and then left the bottom edge raw and then put the back panel on and enclosed it all. I forgot to do so, and so I sewed it all together, then realised I needed to still stitch down to make 2 front pocket inserts. So you'll see that in a few moments, but I just wanted to nip in and say, if you're making this bag, now is the point where you need to sew down before you attach the back panel. So now there are 2 corners to be sewn. So we'll start off with one. So the seam that you've just sewn, which is the bottom of the bag and the side of the bag, that seam, that needs to run through the middle of this triangle shape that you can see here. So you puff sort of the bag out to create a triangle shape, and then that seam needs, which is underneath and just on the top here, that needs to run completely in the middle, and it needs to line up so that your bag is then not wonky. I'm going to create quite a wide bag, so I'm measuring down, I think it was about 5 inches from the point, and then I'm just marking it with some tailor's chalk. This is going to give me an indication of where I need to actually sew, and it makes sure that each corner that I sew is going to be accurate. I'm double checking again that the seam lines up, and then I'm going to get a ruler and just draw along as a stitching guide, but also just double checking that each side of the seam is equal. So then I know that that will be in the middle. This may sound really confusing, so you may find it easier just to watch what I'm doing, but I'm just giving a brief explanation. As I'm using waterproof fabric, I'm not using pins anywhere, so I have these clips which are from Amazon. They are not the official Wonder clips, but they're very similar to that. I just got a big bag of them. They were reasonably cheap. I will put a link in the description box below if you want to check those out. And it just holds them in place so that I can sew and know that that seam is not going to go anywhere. I will cut off those triangle pieces as their excess, but before I do any cutting, I just want to double check that everything lines up. So I'm just turning the bag inside the right side out, just so that I can check that the seams line up and that it's not wonky and nothing's got caught in the process. So once I've checked all that out, I'll then put it back to the wrong size out, and then with my scissors I will just chop off the excess. As I'm using a waterproof fabric, this fabric doesn't fray, but if you were just sewing with a regular cotton or a fabric which does fray, you may want to overlock the seams or bind them somehow, but I don't need to do that just purely because of the type of fabric I'm using. Next up, you want to get your lining pieces and sew the sides, the bottom and the other side So but when you get to the bottom piece, you just need to leave a gap there for turning, because this is how you're going to make sure that all the raw edges are enclosed. So you've got your two sections now. So with the outside of the fabric, so the right side goes inside the lining, so it's right sides together. So as you can see, this white, that is the lining, and the raw edges are on the outside. So once again, I'm using my clips, and I'm going to just line up the side seam on each lining piece and right side fabric, and just put the clips together just to clip them in place. I've got this web strapping that I'm going to just estimate what sort of length I want the bag to be. So once I've done that, I'm going to cut it, but this does fray. So in order to seal it and stop it from fraying, I'm just going to get a lighter, and I'm going to hold it very closely to the end of the strap. This then melts the end of the strap, and it just seals in the edges so it doesn't fray anymore. So you need to do this for each end if you're using this kind of webbing that I used. So there's obviously some sort of polyester content in there. And then once that's done, the strap is which is like the shoulder strap, is going to go in between the outside fabric and the lining fabric. You want to get your tape measure and just measure from each end to make sure that you've got them an equal distance, and it's personal preference of how close or how wide apart you want these straps to be. Again, I'm just using the clips just to put them in place, and then once they're in place, I'm going to stitch both sides together, and I'm going to go all the way around the top, and I'm not going to leave a gap because I've got the gap at the bottom. So once that's sewn, I'm then going to turn it, and then you can see it's the right side, it's being pulled through, and so all the raw edges will be enclosed, and there will be a hole at the bottom, which is the hole that you can see now that I'm getting it out of. But then we're going to seal that up, which is easy enough to do. So you get the seam allowance, fold it to the inside, and the quickest way to do this is just to whip that through your sewing machine and just do a straight stitch all the way through, reinforce at both ends, and it just seals it up completely. Nobody's going to see it because it's going to sit in the very bottom of your bag, and everything is enclosed around here. Now the lining is rolling out, so the best way to get that to stay in place is to do a top stitch. I chose grey thread for my top stitch. It was just regular Gutterman thread, and I put white thread in my bobbin so that on the inside of the bag you can't see it's white and it blends in with the lining. So that's quite a good idea to make sure that you've got colours which are going to blend in, so you can't see the stitching really from one inside. And just watch where your straps are when you're sewing to make sure that you're not sewing them down and that they are in the correct position. If you've enjoyed this tutorial, please feel free to subscribe to my channel. There are lots of sewing tutorials and sewing vlogs that you may want to check out.